First, really get in touch with your calling. You consistently hear this over and over. If I'd known how difficult this journey was going to be, I was like, not even do it. Like, for entrepreneurs, if really it needs to be coming out of you, being created within. There's that energy for you to go build why you're here needs to be in alignment with your why. Don't stop and don't give up. And I see people pivoting so fast every year. They give things like 6 months. They don't see traction fast enough. And I mean, read about the craziest disasters that founders have gone through to be able to build an amazing brand, company impact. That's where the why is at.
Wondering what 100 influencers talking about your brand could do to your bottom line? Meet Sorrel, the influencer platform that brands are using to get a 5 to 7x median ROAS on their influencer spend. As ad costs rise, it's time to build robust marketing moats with authentic creator partnerships. Sorrel automates and simplifies the entire process from finding influencers to contacting them, shipping products, and turning them into affiliates. Sorrel's G2 rating is 4.8, and the brands are loving their customer happiness team that will help you set things up from scratch even if you have no experience with influencers. Ready for a simpler, more effective approach to influencer marketing? DTC Podcast listeners enjoy a special offer. Double the trial length for free at no annual commitment. Start today at getsorrel.com/champion/DTC-newsletter.
We have the grand opening next week, and our coffee partner fell through. So I was like, all right, then I'm going to make our own Paka Cafe too. So I've been on an absolute send to make this happen in time, but just like a quick preview of how things are coming together. There's a really nice high beam ceiling. This is the mountain I summited that people like walk up and stuff, but then we're going to have the cafe in the back too.
That's super cool. And what city are you in again?
Cusco, Peru.
How many people are in Cusco?
Ooh, a lot more foreigners. It's like every single day, thousands of people fly in from around the world to go to Machu Picchu. And so that's what's so cool about this is like how global of a space it is. And it's where I started Paka. And so to make our first store down here was just like, it's been the coolest project to build the home for the brand. And our whole team's flying in for this next week. And I've been with the whole digital stuff. I think we talked about this last time, like being able to actually have a true space that it emanates and resonates out of. Like, you could have all the digital stuff and like those numbers, and how do you really know what that all means? And like to have a space that defines that, where you can talk to customers, where you do understand who they are, and you build that not only internally but externally, I think allows all the digital to pull from. But like without that, I think I was losing some of this, how big we've grown with digital. It's like I felt the need for a little more physical realm.
And so cool to have it in where the product came from. That's pretty rare, I think,
yeah.
right? Like there's a lot of places like that are setting up shops and malls and stuff like that, but to have it in where the product's coming from is pretty cool.
That's why I did it, because I felt like if, I don't know, you open up a store in Boston, you get it and you think it's cool, but finding Paka down here on a life-changing experience, you're going to bring that back with you and you're going to carry it as part of that forward, you know, like it's going to have a lot more meaning for what it represents in your life. And so I thought that was just like a great way to turn a quick prospect to like an evangelist, as opposed to like just somebody that might forget.
And a great retail experience for them too, because they don't, if they're buying a Paka sweater, they probably want to buy it online. They could buy it on the mall, but if they're buying it, again, so close to its origin, to its source, where they're on this mystical Machu Picchu
They're seeing alpacas on their trip.
Yeah.
It's funny talking physical retail on the digital the DTC podcast. I love it.
It's omnichannel, right? I think that's where everyone we started DTC during the pandemic, when everyone was like, okay, we need a direct to consumer plan. And that was the sort of sexy thing, but everyone wants omnichannel, and especially like the way you're doing it is pretty cool. When does the store actually open?
Next Thursday. We've been opening and people are still coming through and like buying and whatnot, but just to have everything the way I really want it to be, all of the natural materials we're bringing in, even this really natural tree for all of the different coffee like tables there, or the bar that we're building for the cafe with the map topography of the Andes, like all those final touches. They're the last 10%, but they're also the most important. So we're on a grind right now with architects Man, it's been a very long project and longer than I anticipated in terms of buffering construction, all the demo we did to open up those like high wooden rafters. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. To have a space now is just really fulfilling, and I can't wait to share it with everybody next Thursday. We have all people from the US flying down, all of our partners too, like big celebration.
And then what are the main differences between opening up retail in a place like US versus a place like Cusco?
Man, it has been the most unbelievable project to open up one store. Like a whole Peru subsidiary, all the legal stuff in Peru, all the, like having gone through that, that was the most annoying process. And Peru's very, bureaucratic, and it was a lot more work than it should be just to open one store, but happy we got there. Oh, and they do this weird thing with tax. It's called IGV. So like they charge 18% to everything that you buy, but then apparently it gets refunded off your taxes at the end of the year, but you still have to pay out. So anything you're depositing on 18%, and then they hold it.
I imagine it's been more complex down in Peru, with the bureaucracy and stuff, but you're probably also getting, like in the US, it's like when you go to retail, I bet it's a lot more cookie cutter, right? Where you get your space, whereas it sounds like you guys are getting to kind of make your own playbook a little bit and build your own space a lot more realistically.
Yeah, and I think that's what we want to do as we expand and grow into the physical realm, is be defining that, with partners as well. If we go into wholesale that really do care and are willing to tell our story with a capsule versus getting lost on like a peg wall. And so I think building our own space and understanding that allows us a lot more leverage to being able to know how Paka can sell in the physical realm and show up, and having it already built, having all of the wholesale operations ready to go for that next step that we're about to take as a full company, right? And so when you talk about Paka's growth digitally, it's like crazy. Nobody's been able to touch this material before buying it, and we've grown as fast as we have, right? Like all of our marketing is about this amazing fiber that is soft as cashmere, warmer than wool, 3 times lighter than sheep's wool with the hollow air pockets, and you never get to feel it before you actually purchase it. And so I think what physical does is it allows us to open up at least the experience and understanding what alpaca is. And of course, digital is going to be a massive central piece to that in like structural story, and owning still the ability to communicate to our community, and digital for testing and moving fast and exclusive drops, and everything that we pride ourselves on is direct to customer. Like that is exactly what's beautiful about D2C, is how connected we are. And I think that for me with building the store has been the same thought process of let's get even more connected to our customer. We've grown so big. I feel like we've honestly lost touch a little bit with, as the team's growing, as new people are joining, we're doubling team size this year. It's like we all need to be making decisions that are based in facts of who these customers are and building for them and knowing them, knowing our alpha consumer. And so that's why this is here.
What's your with retail? You're building this flagship store. Amazing. Is your plan to kind of use this as a bit of a blueprint and a proof of concept, and with the goal of expanding it throughout North America as well, potentially?
Yeah, I think so. First off, just doing this really well and right, and then next up in Colorado, building our headquarters. I would love to have our first floor be a store in Boulder, and second be the office, where again it's like as we're bringing in team, we're connected to customers, and then from there, wholesale represents a very high speed, low drag opportunity to choose the right retailers that are willing to ride with us, and that care about the same values that we do. And so we're blessed to not have taken a shotgun approach early on with distribution and just only be through our site, because then it lends us to being able to really dictate, I think, where we want to show up and what's best for both consumer and Paka, knowing where they are, our heat map of all of the orders thus far, and being able to lend that knowledge to allowing retailers to win as well.
Super cool. Okay, back us up a little bit here and talk. You mentioned about your wild digital growth, and I think I did caught up on the origin story of Paka ahead of time. We can get into that as well, but I'm just curious, like, what has your growth Like, describe your growth journey over the past like 3 years, because I know a lot of brands have had to kind of hit the brakes, or a lot of brands over the past 3 years have had a bit of a rough go of it with a lot of the market factors, the meta challenges, all these different things. How has your growth journey kind of evolved since the pandemic?
I graduated and went full in on Paka during pretty much the pandemic. The Kickstarter took off while I was at university studying neuroscience, right? And then I finished it up. And then when I fully dedicated my life to Paka 2020, that was when pandemic hit. And so it was a really interesting time to still trying to be rebuilding momentum and in building that, which is such a real thing, and also moving through this fast changing environment. And I think this level of fast growth that everybody was used to allowed us to focus in on the real value of Paka as a brand and not take shortcuts. And so much of that is just because we're bootstrapped, Eric. Like, that's been our history. And I think when people just got used to blowing dollars and having high return on ad spend, it was easy to lose sight of the truth and authenticity, the source, and I think iOS and sifted all of these products that were just there because of that massive wave with e-com. And so it made us really clear on why we're here. And we grew very fast still. I think we tripled year after year, fully bootstrapped. And our supply chain was, of course, an extremely difficult thing with how vertical we are down in Peru. Everything from the fiber to the yarn to the grayish fabric, all the way to the final garment, how traceable that all is. But that enabled us too, because when you're so disconnected from your source and like, oh, you're producing something in China, you have no knowledge at all about how to pivot or adapt or what's causing that issue as well. And for us to be able to be so connected to the alpaqueros, to the, the women weavers that are making all of the parts of our garment, like the Inca ID, then we could move as one unit and be this connected tribe moving through it. And so I think A, connection, and B, bootstrapped, like in a really simple answer.
Just for those who don't know, who haven't caught up, give us the Paka sort of origin story. We'll go from there.
We just went straight into this. I was on a backpacking trip between high school and college. I wanted to travel the world. And so my parents said, well, if you're going to do that, then good luck. And so I had to work my butt off high school to be able to leave Maine, this tiny homogeneous community I was from, and go explore. And so I took my backpack through Europe and South America. And as I was busing from Bolivia to the west coast of Peru, I came across this alpaca sweater that this grandmother artisan had made, and I was blown away by the fabric. It's so soft, so light, and it was everything for the rest of my trip. It was my pillow on the overnight buses. It was keeping me cozy on all the climates in South America, right? The desert, the jungle, the mountains, everything that you go through. Then I get to university first year, and every time I wear it, people always were like, where's that from? I realized people know merino in the US and they know cashmere, but alpaca, this unbelievably cute, funny, but very rigorous animal, nobody knew. And so I flew back on a one-way that summer, not knowing anybody, not having any connection, not even really speaking Spanish that well, and started traveling around the Andes Mountains. Ended up living with one family of weavers, the Mamanis, that I was like on their rooftop making the first prototype, having breakfast with the whole family. And we launched these prototypes out of my dorm room, which became the template that we launched the Kickstarter. At that moment, I was like, this is real, when it really took off. And we made that video with those videographers that I convinced to fly down. But I was all in at that point, and nobody believed in it, not even my family. And like, I had taken some dollars from my actual college bank account, and people don't know that, but like, I wouldn't have not graduated from college if Paka wasn't successful. And so that level is just believing in something.
Because you spent your money.
Like my college, account.
Yeah.
I put in for this Kickstarter. It was hard. It was the most so long nights. Oh my goodness. And the level of stress that I've carried as a burden. I mean, I think there's a beauty of investment, and I also think there's a beauty of having your full skin in the game, balancing those two, is what I'm doing now.
Super cool. So you mentioned flying down with a videographer crew to kind of make. Do you think the video was one of the essential components of your Kickstarter success?
By far. Nothing is like an overnight success that way. I mean, it took an entire year of building that momentum and pre-launch email list and getting people really rallied about what we were doing. You can't launch something to crickets, right? And that's kind of the misconception, I think, with crowdfunding projects is it still takes so much grassroots to be able to have an audience already there. But yeah, video, I knew it was the only way we could show where this came from in the heart of the brand. The alpacas free roaming and running alongside the lakes, the hands of the women weavers sorting through the fiber that they manually do to understand the micron range and separate that for, like, everything just visually is so amazing down here. And I knew that showing that world of where this came from would be the most special way to share that, create that bridge.
So you had the in with the weavers that you were staying with, and then when you decided to go all in, like, how did you recruit? How many weavers are on Paka staff now, and how did you kind of go about putting that all together?
We're very lucky to have partnered with one of the most legendary weavers called Nilda Calanapa Avares. You can Google her. She's National Geographic, and she is a force where Nilda had actually traveled to the U.S. as a young girl and been able to find people that would finance her to build an NGO to preserve the Inca tradition, the Quechua weaving. And so Nilda had been on a journey to build this NGO and this amazing movement called CTTC, Centro Textiles Tradicionales de Chinchero. And so I partnered up with Nilda as we were taking off. And now, I mean, there are over 200 Quechua women weavers that are all hand weaving the Inca ID that we include on every part of our garments. And I think that was the biggest unlock, was when we were trying to go between keeping our handmade element and making the most functional product. The whole thing couldn't be handmade, like this jacket, right? With the laser cutting and seam sealing and bonding, all of that machinery to make what ultimately is going to outperform synthetics. Then we had to make the most functional product, and people trip on that because I think you can get lost on everything having to be handmade, but really, in order to make impact, people have to choose your product. Without even that, it has to just be a better product, and I learned that. And so what was so important was to still include a handwoven, the heart of Paka, into every garment that we make, and that was done with Nilda.
I think that's such a super valid point. Your product has to be picked up. That's the number. I was talking with someone in the CPG game, in the grocery, like, consumables game. And, like, the bottom line is, like, your product has to be chosen among others, like, before you have any product market fit, right?
Oh my, with such a massive quantity in the CPG space of just, like, information coming at you as you're going down the aisle.
Yeah. Super cool. So what would you say? Well, the one question I had, you have a neuroscience background. What about your neuroscience background has helped you as an entrepreneur?
Realizing I didn't want to be in a lab, I think, under fluorescent lights. I actually would listen to podcasts like yours when I was in the lab counting cells and really thinking about what Paka could become. And so thanks to podcasts like yours, while I was at school, I was able to understand a different route that was not the traditional route, and I always didn't feel like that fit me. And so obviously I love science. I worked with, like, monkeys in Bolivia as part of my gap year and understanding, like, their neural pathways and health, longevity, all of those things for me are so dear to my journey. And so I have definitely just garnered, like, a hands-on science material approach for what we're doing with R&D. And I think it's slightly applicable in that sense of looking to nature for the answers in building the most functional product hands-on and innovating that way. And that's what wakes me up in the morning, is like that, the R&D and making this alpaca insulation, right, or the new alpaca fleece. And I think that's the only relevant thing I can pull from why neuroscience and Paka make any sense together. Otherwise, it's just a wash.
Otherwise, or just that you didn't want to be doing cell counting under fluorescent lights, which I totally understand. And then you bring up R&D. I'm a natural fiber junkie. I'm more familiar with merino. I got my merino t-shirt on here. Mm-hmm. And it's just a miracle fabric for me, how it's just so much better in every way. It washes up better. It holds itself better. It never has it's antimicrobial, all these amazing things.
Can't make it
Talk
smell.
to me a little, and I also just see it as this massive opportunity in the space. Like the fact that all of these health conscious people all over the world are wearing Lululemon microplastics
Oil.
under, 24 hours a day, these oil-based products. So talk to me a little bit about the moment that like natural fibers are having at this time.
Huge. I mean, I think we saw it with food, the level of obsessive importance that consumers gave once we realized, oh, we're ingesting this and it's becoming a part of our bodies, right? Like if I'm eating this and it has pesticides in it, or it came from an animal that had a terrible life, perhaps cellularly that's going to affect my energy. And it's like a selfish thing, which is fine. Like that is okay to drive impact. You buy organic because you know it's better for you, right? With clothing, I feel that it's just a trend slightly behind, but that's been picking up speed so fast as science is revealing itself on microplastics, and 80% of Americans, and that 2/3 of all clothing is currently made from oil. Like people don't know they're wearing petroleum on their bodies. In the past, that happened in 6 decades, 60 years after World War II, mass commercialized plastic is when we started wearing this, polyester, spandex, acrylic, nylons. And yeah, now we're beginning to realize, and it'll continue happening with science, that we're going to learn the impact of wearing oil and microplastics, and people are already making smarter decisions. And we see that with the questions that people are asking us about certifications, whether the GOTS certification or what our traceable alpaca certification is that we had to make and build, right? Or organic, all of that. And so it's happening. I think you just have to continually educate an open source and be transparent about it, and customers will find the way.
Who is you mentioned your alpha customer? Like who is your prime customer at this time?
Yeah, we just went through a big annual survey and have been really thinking this through because, like to your point, there's so much awareness from Merino, right? I mean, in the communities and space of the icebreakers and smart wools of the world that have paved a natural fiber awareness already that exists. For us, we have quite a wide customer base, but one that we've narrowed in on. We have this one customer, Nancy, that flew out from New Hampshire. One time when we had this survey, and we continually go back to her, this 42-year-old woman living in New Hampshire, built her own home sustainably, and is just getting into mountain biking and really loves outdoors. It's people that are connecting into nature and taking care of it, similarly to a young dad that is taking his kids out to Yosemite and really wanting to choose the right future. And so those people are who we're speaking to and building for and innovating with. And DTC has been critical for us to be able to even have those conversations.
And then what's the value proposition for this customer? Is it like you mentioned when you started wearing your sweater, and how many comments you'd get just on how good it looked. People didn't know that it was ethically created or that it wasn't microplastics. They just knew it looked really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what is that? What draws your customer to you first, most often, would you say?
It's like this new it's the novelty aspect of this fiber, but then as you learn the odor resistance and the breathability and the lightweight and the softness, it's like it really just communicates one all season simplicity piece. And when these customers are looking to buy less and buy better from a longevity standpoint, from everything else in their lives, Paka does that because this animal evolved in this like daily thermoregulating range that you freeze and burn to death in the same day. So the fiber for tens of thousands of years has had to adapt to that versatility. And when you think about building a product that can be that all season and take you through all of those different temperature ranges, it allows you to buy less and buy better. You only need one hoodie, right? And so that's kind of the whole value add, is that it's extremely versatile and it thermoregulates and is there for you as your companion as you navigate all of from the city to the mountains to the beach. It goes through all of that.
Super cool. And then what's been you mentioned D2C being this, massive game changer. Now you're coming full circle into omnichannel, but what's been most effective for reaching customers D2C? And at this point, how omnichannel are you across all those? Let's focus on the digital platforms.
No, we're 100% just through website right now. Now the store, that's it. But
badass. And then in terms of your marketing stack, what has your D2C marketing stack like? What's taken you to the heights you're at now?
Well, we tend to simplify it to acquisition and retention amongst other channels of reaching our audience. But the acquisition, the traditional ones being Meta for us as a massive game changer, Google, now really SEO as we're building actual awareness for this category in and of ourselves to be building what alpaca is and means with our blog and putting out information and educating. That's becoming its own thing in source. In terms of retention, we're very lucky to have such a high returning customer rate, and I think that's just from our integrity for the most part with product quality and customer service and being able to really speak to that person in a unique way. Our packaging, everything's very well thought through and done. But yeah, we have those what we call like harpoons internally to be able to get messages out into the world for what we're doing, such as this new store that we're creating. And we've invited our whole community down, and there are people traveling down for this. Like over 100 people signed up like to come for this event, and that's special if we can continually bring our community into, hey, what do you think of these different colors? Like, what would you want, right? If people can be a part of the build and the why and the journey, they're there for the ride. And that's what we've tried to do very well, is not just launching or going wide with tons of product categories either. Like, we're really having purpose behind everything we go to make and bringing our community along for it with that retention like strategy,
I love that you brought up SEO. I think that's, more and more brands are investing more heavily there. And I did a podcast with Four Sigmatic, my friend Rick at Four, who leads growth at Four Sigmatic. And he was talking about, they're a 9-figure brand. They're just unbelievable, their growth. And he was talking about how much success they're having really going up funnel instead of trying to compete on Google and on keywords on, heavily on mushroom coffee. And,
yes. Yeah.
Which they're going up market now to focus on the ingredients, right? They're focusing on the individual pieces, the shaga, the different mushroom things. And the same thing applies to you guys, right? Where there may not be as, it might be hyper competitive on merino wool or alpaca wool hoodies or whatever. But if you kind of go focus on the materials and the story and bring people in there and then bring them down funnel, you'll probably have a better time.
That's very interesting. And you have to be able to be willing to see that longer term, right? We've just gotten so addicted to that quick hit of Meta and whatnot. And building a brand is a real long-term vision and thing to create, and that top of funnel strategy, especially as you begin to hit those ceilings at growth stages with those channels, those acquisition channels, need to be able to create awareness and broader learning and education. So we're big on that.
You mentioned you're going through a major hiring spurt, and I'm curious, over the past year or 2 years or so, what position has been the most instrumental for you to get hired, and which of those positions has had the biggest impact?
I'm going through probably one of the bigger ones right now, which is bringing in a general manager. That is something that I've had to come to terms with, of my focus and limitations, my strengths and limitations for what I really believe I need to now at this stage of Paka put my energy into and be driving the brand, the product, the creative, and allowing somebody to be that amazing people manager for the team, and the clarity and the cross-functional alignment and organization and GDM, all of that I am not the best at. 27, I just recognize that I'm not going to be that, that people in the whole alignment there. And so, of course, the duo is very important, and that is something that we're going through right now, of bringing in with full trust and bringing in partners that, now that this baby is birthed out of me, there are things that can be defined outside like the core values and what Paka this thing is that's a living entity and that people can go and work on and with, and it's going to college, and it's got to go out in the world, and other people have to come, and you got to give trust. And so for me, like, my biggest theme with bringing in team has been trust, and being able to allow people with amazing talent and skill set and experience to be able to take it to another level. And so for me, that's like a big role that I'm excited to step into. And of course, there's a lot of conversations there, but it's exciting.
Well, it's always good on the DTC podcast to put your intentions out into the ether. So you never know, there may be a perfect Paka GM listening.
Oh, we have one starting, like, signed.
Oh, you have? They've already been hired. Okay, got it.
Yeah, we'll put that out in a few weeks, but yeah, coming down for the store launch and everything with the team. It's a big deal.
Very cool. And then what will this free you up to be focusing on more, would you say?
Stepping into more of the creative lens of driving the product and where we're going. All of the fabric and R&D and the fabric franchises that we're building here at Paka. So the design I'm obsessed with. I was just in Japan getting extremely inspired by just what we can elevate to the retail, coming down and building the store, and like really translating this what's been digital brand into physical materials. And what is Paka's store? Like that. So I guess you can sum it up as CEO and creative director, but the level of focus onto the future vision of where we're going and what's going to bring Paka to the next level, and be able to be touched by more people, enjoyed by more people.
Where do you want to take Paka in the next 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years, it's really bringing alpaca to the outdoor industry and doing that in a way that puts it on another pedestal in the natural fiber space that gets more people wearing nature. Beyond alpaca, it's wearing nature. That concept, that bringing and creating the most functional clothing that's made from natural fibers, I really see that as our long-term journey that we're on.
Very cool. And then, so you started with your sort of hero product, right? You started with the hoodie. Was that the first product you made?
Yeah, that was the Kickstarter.
That was the Kickstarter. And then how many SKUs do you have now?
Styles, about 50 to 60.
Very cool. And then what's been, as the hoodie maintained its status as the sort of hero product, or what's your suite of hero products look like right now?
The hoodie is absolutely still by far our biggest entry point to the brand. I think that's just because of having one piece that fits it all for people to try alpaca, and that has the biggest history in the Kickstarter and the social. It's just what Paka is known for as our sort of a collector iconic, like OG piece. But then we're able to be creating these new categories that are growing, and it's hard as a brand to be able to take bets and step into new categories and really build something that clearly you can be the best at rather than just doing it, right? Like, that's where my focus is right now, is what the future of Paka looks like beyond that hoodie. And of course, with the outerwear or the fleece or the sock program, or even our underwear now that we're pushing and really getting out for people in their most intimate parts to be wearing all organic natural fibers, and decreasing seasonality too for the business, right? Because people, when they hear alpaca or wool, they think, oh, that's warm, that's heavy, that's fall, winter. But in reality, it's 3 times lighter than sheep's wool. It's extremely breathable. It's so odor resistant and soft. And so this underwear program we're seeing extreme success with, and now driving a lot of acquisition as well through it. Our whole website is really geared towards that right now. And so getting people to be able to have a full Paka fit that's redoing their wardrobe of plastics.
I love it. And yeah, the more intimate a piece of apparel is, the more important it is that it is natural, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, especially when you're hiking and sweating in it, and you're, that's touching those parts that absorb more than anything.
Yeah, people don't think of clothes as things you consume in the same way you might like a grocery thing. But your skin you're constantly interchanging with whatever's touching your skin, right? People don't realize how porous our bodies are.
Yes. Yeah, it's like transdermal absorption, we're still learning about in terms of what really on the diameter level can be absorbed. But we'll see that happen with science for sure. And especially all the phthalates, the new PFAS regulation, like the legislation that's going on to ban that for all products. I mean, like REI is just banned PFAS starting next year. So brands like that have hundreds of thousands of jackets, you're going to see crazy sales this like fall of companies trying to clear their PFAS. So I'm happy to see legislation being made. I think like that's awesome when forces can align on a global level to a North Star. And that's really, I think, helpful that we all need as consumers. It's like similar to food that way, right?
So you've got amazing product market fit, amazing product. Your marketing has worked really well. You're trying to tell a bigger, broader story about your product, about your materials. What are your plans, I don't know, in 2024 and beyond about how you're going to reach more people with sort of true top of funnel efforts? Is it going to be just really effective meta advertising, or do you have other more true top of funnel efforts planned?
No, that's been the conversation we kicked off with, is that physical realm. And I think really that's key for top of funnel growth in any ways, whether owned retail or the right wholesale partner. So for us, that's like the two-pronged strategy of doing that right, while we continue to obviously invest into online and education and our community that way. I bought two baby alpacas during the pandemic and went on a full road trip down the West Coast from Seattle to San Diego to meet people and spread light and like be able to show this crazy, like you've seen alpaca and it just blows your mind that this A exists, but B is like the cutest animal in the world, and then C also has the most amazing fiber. And so for us, I think that is such a really great mascot that we're just blessed to be able to play offense with and be able to bring as well. And like the whole connection of the alpaqueros and the way that relationships exist with the alpaca out here, of taking care of it and coexisting back to nature, is what we're about on that level. And so people that are, I mean, I hope to be able to do alpaca pop-ups and continually having that fun and vibe around the brand as we're in the physical realm, you know, and like communities. And
I've met a few alpacas, and it is hard to understand that they exist. Like when you like, it's hard to understand that it's like the same thing when I met an ostrich for the first time.
To meeting an alpaca, and there's like gone, you know, everything you're worried tripping about is like,
and it's so nice that you don't. It's not like leather or beef or something where if you you have a chicken on KFC's logo or whatever, it's a little disingenuous because the chickens aren't loving it.
No,
but
or
with
even
alpacas,
down,
they need to be sheared, right?
It's good for their hygiene. Yeah, they're shorn annually, and everything from no parasitic infections, and for their mobility, not overheating. They've just been evolved alongside humans that way to be shorn annually, and it's good for them. It's like, annual vet in the same way of, and I think people don't understand that. They think that, sometimes people who really have no idea think that the alpacas are even killed, because with goose down they are. With jackets, you have to kill the geese to be able to pluck those feathers. And of course, it's byproduct of the meat industry, but still, when you look at China's mass farming of these poor birds that are just never seeing light and being farmed in crazy capacities for that process, it definitely can contaminate your view on animal and what that means. But I do believe full-heartedly in the ability for us to work as one species, like all of things working together in the environment that way, and sustainability. I don't understand that we can't work in synergy as we have and evolve for tens of thousands of years together, and being able to leverage that. I think it's just gross when it's done in a very unnatural way, but we're trying to show that and pave that with our traceability program and all of that.
I loved what you mentioned just about apparel being behind food in a way. Like food is going through this in such a big way with the better for you options everywhere you turn. And I think they're starting to think of clothes the same way. And I think it's just, you're at the relative early stages of a huge growth journey, with people becoming more and more aware of how bad fast fashion is, how much plastic their bodies are consuming, all these different things. It seems like Paka's really well positioned.
I'm excited for this. I'm excited. Yeah. Like all of the awakening that's being done. You're clearly a big part, evangelist, and connecting and learning to that all the time. So it's exciting to be watching it unfold in real time right now.
I'm going to start a new esoteric philosophical podcast, and I'll have you on that because I think we could probably have some good discourse there as well.
That's awesome. That's going to be
as
called.
Always. Yeah, I haven't figured that out. As such a purpose-driven entrepreneur, I'm curious about the way you see your goals in terms of like exit. Do you want to build a natural fibers empire? Do you want to try to exit? What's your plan on where you'd like to see the business go?
No, I've realized last year going through a process of turning down term sheets that I am on this journey to build, the next natural Patagonia and enjoy the ride for decades. And I'm not here for an exit or quick flip. I don't see what the purpose would be of that if this is why I'm here in doing this and living my passion, ultimate purpose, why I'd want to accelerate that to dislike it more, which I have done, right? When you set your goals and you're like, oh, we're going to grow by 3x or 5x this year, you're choosing that. And I see so much there's also a level of unhealthiness to crazy growth. And I've sat crazy bootstrap for 6 years, right? No life other than Paka. And I think on the longer term, you begin to understand the need for longevity and building, and of course that balance between it's sustainability, the same way that we're talking about the unnatural of the geese in that, right? That this can all work and not be forced in a way. And so just doing things right, making sure we're building the best product. I would feel like absolute rock bottom if I put out a product that people didn't like or that I knew was not quality. There was lack of integrity. And so for me, that's goals. Goals is making the most fire product that people can't get enough of, and it's solving something in their life. And when we do that right, I think everything else, you see that in the longer term, right? First, you have to see the sales. You have to know it's going to work. You got to have that. But you realize it's really just about building that value to the customer and the best product. And so that for me is ultimate W.
You mentioned in terms of that quality and the brand's mission, you mentioned the ID that's woven into each of your pieces. Could you talk a little bit about how that works and what that does for the business?
Sure. In terms of the manufacturing of it, or what it does on some metaphorical
level.
What was
a Paka ID or something? You had
you
have something that's hand woven in.
Every garment we make has this Inca ID that is hand woven from the group of over 200 now Quechua women weavers in the Sacred Valley. And it's on all the products for the most part that we're making and embedded into them. And it's this hand woven that's coming from where all of it is and contains the tradition of the Inca that allows this to be preserved and continue onwards in a global way that is modern and accessible. And so for us, that's been everything. It's where we're from. It's where all of the clothes are being made and the fiber comes from. And so it just represents, I think, a lot in terms of when you have this garment, it's genuinely from the most beautiful place in the Sacred Valley in the Andes Mountains from these Quechua women weavers. And there's that is so authentic to the source of everything.
I love it. And it fits this concept. I did a podcast with the Houdini sportswear CMO, and he was talking about the circular economy, right? And the circular design, this idea of having things live in harmony. Because I think when you're talking about fast fashion, you're talking about fast food, all of these sort of things that are maybe afflicting our modern society, they haven't taken into account this sort of circular approach to making sure that everything still fits together. It sounds like that's kind of how you're thinking about things, which sounds built for the long term.
They're so conscious of that and the materials that they choose. I'm a big fan of their brand.
Put yourself in the shoes of someone where you were in university, listening to this podcast, thinking about wanting to be a D2C founder, follow in your footsteps. What high level advice would you give them for someone thinking about building a brand in 2024?
Well, first, really get in touch with your calling, what you really want to do, because that is where I mean, this, you consistently hear this over and over. If I'd known how difficult this journey was going to be, I was like, not even do it. Like, for entrepreneurs, of really, it needs to be coming out of you, being created within, and it's like, there's that energy for you to go build why you're here needs to be in alignment with your why. And so once you know that, it's like a full on just don't stop. And don't give up. And I see people pivoting so fast every year. They give things like, 6 months or whatever, and then they don't see traction fast enough. And I mean, read about the craziest disasters that founders have gone through to be able to build an amazing brand, company impact, and withstand that. So that's where the why is at, and not stopping. It's like, a full on hustler through everything. If you have that, you're unstoppable.
What does at this point, you mentioned, working all hours in the early days. I'm sure you're no slouch now, but what is your work-life balance? How do you think about your work-life balance now? And will it change when you have a GM? That's
this whole thing I'm going through. Yeah. So I've not had any sort of, you talk to any person close to me and it's pretty unhealthy, obviously, for how much I focus and obsess over this baby, because it's been inside of me. Now that this thing is actually birthed, it's out there, it's a different sort of relationship I'm working on with showing up, and also having Kris and that creativity, and the ability to make music, and the ability to prioritize family, and the ability to go on adventures and absorb without everything having to apply back to this Paka. And it's like, when you're building something, it's when you meet somebody, you're like networking, you're connecting. It's always about, how is this going to connect back to what I'm building, right? Like, oh, maybe you're doing like this podcast, or it's always about that alignment. And that's where that can become really tricky energetically, when you're also, okay, well, then what am I? And where's that space for my own self and identity? And so, I don't know. I think you do have to lose yourself a bit of process. Balance is falling in and out of balance. I love that quote. That's really where the learning's at.
It's into your comment too about not thinking about trying to flip this, trying to sell this business, because it's like, when you do build it into so much of your identity, and you're on a mission, you're on a purpose-driven mission, selling this business, you'd be like, what's my point now, in a way, right?
I know.
Like,
and then just to watch it get just murked. Yeah. No.
Yeah, which happens a lot in that transaction, right?
Oh, for sure. Losing control, board of directors, whatever, people that don't understand actually what you're building.
Let's stay away from that. And let's keep connecting, Kris, because I think
we need to.
Man, I love what you're doing here. I love what you're building. I got to get out to Peru. I've just never been to Peru. I feel like I've just got to come on out.
Yeah, and shouts to Eric on the September massive e-commerce thing that's going to be happening, if that's public.
Mastermind. I haven't even announced that yet, but yeah, September 18th, 19th, we're doing another C-suite mastermind. You've outed us here, which is great. I'm happy to have, and I'm going to try to bring you out, because I think you would be a amazing addition to the proceedings.
Show up with 2 alpacas. Absolutely.
Oh, but nice, man.
Love to have you come down here. Even if anybody wants to come even to Peru, feel free to reach out. This is our home down here, and whether adventure, recommending what's up, I'm around, and we have a great community down here. It'll change your life if anybody wants to come down.
And any listeners out there, you want a climate-controlled, like fully natural hoodie to be doing your laptop work from, whether you're mountain climbing or you're just building a business, I think we all need to get some Paka Apparel. So go to, it's paka.com, right?
Paka Apparel, or paka.co, P-A-K-A. You can just Google it. We'll come. Yeah, P-A-K-A.
Paka. Google Paka. Kris, man, thanks for coming on. This is a lot of fun.
No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for inspiring the fluorescent light cell counting Kris to understand that this was a path, and all of the work that you're doing to shine light on building your own movement in life. It's like the most special thing ever.
My pleasure, man. Thanks again. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at direct-to-consumer, all one word, .co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.